Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood in the dimly lit laboratory in Ouagadougou, his eyes scanning the rows of vials containing genetically modified mosquitoes. News had reached him weeks ago about Bill Gates' ambitious project to release GMO mosquitoes in African countries to combat malaria. At first, it seemed like a noble scientific endeavor, but Traoré's intuition and the reports from his health advisors told a different story. He had studied the potential ecological consequences, the unknown risks of genetic mutations, and the lack of full transparency from international organizations. The more he learned, the more convinced he became this was not a harmless experiment. Without hesitation, Traoré summoned his top scientific advisors and military officers. We will not allow foreign entities to experiment on our land, at the cost of our people's safety, he declared firmly. The room was silent, the gravity of the decision weighing heavily on everyone. Within hours, a coordinated operation began. Security forces moved into the labs, confiscating samples and ensuring that every vial, every specimen of the GMO mosquitoes was destroyed. By nightfall, all traces of the project had been wiped out. It was a bold and unprecedented move, one that would send shockwaves through the global scientific community. As news of Traoré's actions reached international headlines, Bill Gates' team scrambled to understand how their carefully planned experiment had been thwarted. In Burkina Faso, however, citizens felt a surge of pride. Their leader had acted decisively to protect them from an invisible threat that could have had catastrophic consequences. Traoré watched the last vial being incinerated. His mind was already thinking several steps ahead: how to reinforce biosecurity, how to communicate with the international community, and how to ensure that the sovereignty of Burkina Faso remained unchallenged. Tonight, he had not only destroyed a dangerous experiment, but also sent a clear message. The safety and autonomy of his people were non-negotiable. The morning after the operation, the news spread like wildfire across international media. Headlines screamed, "Burkina Faso destroys Bill Gates' GMO Mosquito project." Scientists and journalists alike were astonished. Some called it reckless. Others quietly admired Traoré's decisiveness. In a sleek office in Seattle, Bill Gates stared at the breaking news on his screen. His team scrambled, trying to contact Burkina Faso's officials through diplomatic channels, offering explanations, negotiations, even financial incentives. But Traoré remained unmoved. He knew the stakes were higher than any monetary offer. "Our people's lives are priceless," he told his advisors. "No external pressure can compromise our safety or sovereignty." Meanwhile, embassies across Africa were buzzing. Neighboring countries watched with a mix of admiration and caution. Could one man's bold actions change the balance of scientific experimentation? In Africa, would others follow Burkina Faso's lead? Or would this spark international tension? In Ouagadougou, Traoré held a press conference. Cameras flashed as he stepped to the podium. Calm but authoritative, he addressed both national and international audiences. "Burkina Faso will not allow foreign experiments on our land that threaten the well-being of our citizens. Scientific progress is important, but it cannot come at the cost of human safety." The world listened. Social media exploded, with hashtags supporting Traoré trending globally. Some praised him as a hero defending African sovereignty. Others criticized him as obstructing scientific advancement. Yet, within Burkina Faso, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Citizens felt protected, empowered, and proud of their leader's courage. As the dust settled, Traoré returned to his office, reflecting on the larger implications. The fight was far from over. There would be international pressure, lobbying, and perhaps even attempts to circumvent his decisions. But for now, one thing was clear: he had made a historic stand, and Burkina Faso's safety had been secured, for now. Days after the laboratory operation, a team of international scientists arrived in Ouagadougou. Their mission was clear: to persuade Captain Traoré to reconsider, or at least delay, the destruction of the GMO mosquitoes. They came with glossy presentations, charts of projected malaria reductions, and carefully rehearsed arguments about global scientific responsibility. Traoré welcomed them in the presidential conference room, his posture firm, his eyes unwavering. "We appreciate your concern for public health," he began, "but no amount of data can justify experimenting on our people without their consent or a thorough understanding of the risks. The scientists attempted to argue the long-term benefits. Malaria kills hundreds of thousands in Africa every year. One of them said, "This project could save lives on a massive scale." Traoré nodded, acknowledging the statement, but his tone remained resolute. "I am aware of the risks of malaria," he replied, "but I am also aware of the risks of untested genetic modification. You cannot gamble with our people's future." Hours of discussions turned into heated debates. Gates' team grew frustrated, resorting to pressure tactics, emphasizing potential international funding and partnerships. Traoré, however, had anticipated these moves. He outlined a detailed biosecurity plan for Burkina Faso, demonstrating that the country could combat malaria effectively through sustainable methods, mosquito nets, vaccines, improve sanitation, without resorting to experimental genetic engineering. By the end of the day, the scientists left the meeting in stunned silence. Traoré had not only defended his country, but had exposed the arrogance and blind ambition of foreign entities attempting to dictate Africa's future. Back in his office, Traoré looked out over the city. Children played in the streets, farmers tended their fields, and the heartbeat of Burkina Faso pulsed strong and free. He had taken a stand not just against a scientific project, but against the notion that Africa's destiny could be controlled from abroad. The news of Captain Traoré's decisive action travelled swiftly across the nation. From the dusty villages in the Sahel to the bustling streets of Ouagadougou, people spoke of the leader who had stood against powerful international forces to protect his country. Social media buzzed with images of Traoré inspecting the incinerated vials, accompanied by messages of gratitude and pride. Journalists from across Africa and even Europe arrived, eager to capture the story of the man who dared defy Bill Gates' project. Traoré knew that controlling the narrative was as important as the action itself. In carefully staged interviews, he emphasized transparency, sovereignty, and the precautionary principle in scientific experiments. "Our people's safety is non-negotiable," he declared to the cameras. "We welcome scientific advancement, but not at the cost of risking lives without clear accountability." Internationally, reactions were mixed. Some applauded Burkina Faso's assertiveness, citing it as a necessary check on unchecked scientific ambition. Others criticized Traoré as obstructionist, warning that halting the GMO project could hinder progress against malaria. Gates' team attempted to release statements, highlighting the potential global health benefits, but the images of destroyed vials and Traoré's firm resolve dominated headlines. Within Burkina Faso, however, the effect was transformative. Citizens began organizing community meetings, discussing public health strategies, and actively participating in the decision-making process. Traoré had not only neutralized a potential biohazard but had also inspired civic engagement, strengthening the nation's social fabric. As the sun set over the capital, Traoré stood on a balcony overlooking a city alive with energy. He felt the weight of responsibility, yet also the pulse of a nation ready to defend its sovereignty. The battle for control over Africa's scientific experiments had begun, and Burkina Faso had already claimed a historic victory. In the days following the lab destruction, the international response escalated. Bill Gates convened a crisis meeting at his Seattle office. Surrounded by scientists, advisors, and diplomatic contacts, the news from Burkina Faso had not only derailed a carefully orchestrated project but also embarrassed powerful institutions that had supported it. "We need a new approach," Gates told his team. "Traoré's decision cannot stand, but we also cannot appear hostile. Prepare a multi-tiered strategy, diplomatic outreach, media campaigns, and incentives for compliance." Meanwhile, embassies and NGOs reached out to Burkina Faso, emphasizing collaboration, humanitarian aid, and the supposed benefits of the GMO project. Yet, Captain Traoré remained calm, his resolve unshaken. He convened his closest advisors in the presidential office. "They will try everything: pressure, persuasion, even subtle threats," he said. "Our response must be proactive. We will strengthen border controls, enhance biosecurity, and communicate openly with our citizens. Transparency is our greatest weapon." A specialized team of scientists and security experts, was deployed to monitor any attempts to smuggle or reintroduce GMO samples. Traoré also initiated public campaigns to educate the population about the risks of untested genetic experiments. Schools, community centers, and local media outlets all participated in disseminating information. Despite the mounting international pressure, Burkina Faso citizens rallied behind their leader. Protests in support of Traoré were organized in major cities, while social media campaigns amplified the message of sovereignty and safety. Traoré had transformed what could have been a quiet political controversy into a national movement. As night fell over Ouagadougou, Traoré reviewed intelligence reports detailing international maneuvers. He smiled faintly. The global chessboard had shifted, and Burkina Faso was now firmly in control of its own destiny. The battle had only begun. But the first victory was clear. No foreign entity would dictate the terms of life or science on Burkinabe soil. The morning sun cast long shadows over Ouagadougou as Captain Traoré oversaw the deployment of new biosecurity measures. Checkpoints were established at strategic locations, ensuring that no unauthorized biological materials entered the country. Laboratories were audited, and strict protocols were implemented to prevent any clandestine experiments. Traoré convened a council of top scientists, military leaders, and health officials. Our goal is clear, he stated. We safeguard our citizens, we maintain transparency, and we ensure that no foreign entity can experiment on our soil without full consent and understanding of the risks. Meanwhile, teams of international scientists attempted to find loopholes. Some approached local officials, offering partnerships and research funding. Others tried to send equipment through neighboring countries. Traoré's intelligence network caught these attempts early, and swift action was taken to intercept any unauthorized materials. In parallel, a nationwide awareness campaign was launched. Posters, radio announcements, and community workshops explained the dangers of untested genetic modification. Traoré personally visited villages and schools, addressing crowds about the importance of caution and informed consent in scientific experiments. His message was simple but powerful. Burkina Faso controls its own destiny. The international community watched closely. Gates advisors proposed new strategies, including modified projects and collaborative approaches. But every attempt was met with firm resistance. Traoré's unwavering stance sent a clear signal: Burkina Faso would not compromise its sovereignty or the safety of its people. By evening, as the city quieted, Traoré walked through the streets, observing the impact of his actions. Citizens expressed their gratitude, and the sense of national pride was palpable. The battle to control Africa's scientific future had entered a new phase. But one thing was certain: under Traoré's leadership, Burkina Faso was a fortress, both in principle and in practice. Captain Traoré convened an emergency summit with African leaders in Ouagadougou. Heads of state, health ministers, and scientific advisors gathered to discuss the implications of the destroyed GMO mosquito samples and the future of public health initiatives on the continent. Burkina Faso has taken a stand. Traoré began, his voice firm, not against science, but against the unilateral imposition of experiments that endanger our people. The room was filled with nods of agreement and murmurs of approval. Leaders shared concerns about sovereignty, transparency, and the risks of genetically modified organisms being introduced without comprehensive study. Traoré proposed a continental council to evaluate all foreign scientific projects before implementation. Simultaneously, Traoré maintained open communication with the international media. Interviews, press releases, and social media campaigns emphasized Burkina Faso's commitment to responsible science and the protection of human life. Public opinion worldwide began to shift. Many viewed Traoré not as an obstacle but as a principled guardian of ethical standards. Meanwhile, Gates' team tried alternative strategies. They offered collaborative research initiatives, promising oversight and safety protocols. Traoré, however, remained cautious. Trust must be earned, not assumed, he told his advisors. We welcome scientific input, but we decide how it is applied on our soil. Public demonstrations in support of Traoré multiplied across major cities. Citizens carried banners, organized educational events, and participated in community discussions. Their collective voice became a powerful tool, reinforcing the message that Burkina Faso would not yield to external pressures. As night fell, Traoré reflected on the day's progress. The alliance with other African leaders strengthened his position. The public's trust fortified his mandate, and the international narrative slowly began to recognize Burkina Faso's stance as both legitimate and morally responsible. The stage was set for a new era of scientific sovereignty in Africa, with Traoré leading the charge. The following weeks were tense. Bill Gates' team escalated their efforts, launching a series of media campaigns portraying the GMO Mosquito project as crucial to Africa's fight against malaria. Press releases, sponsored articles, and carefully crafted reports flooded the international outlets. Traoré, however, remained unshaken. In the presidential office, he convened his communications team. "They will try to manipulate public perception," he said. "We will counter with facts, transparency, and direct engagement with our people." Radio broadcasts across Burkina Faso highlighted the dangers of untested genetic modifications. Community leaders organized forums, allowing citizens to ask questions and voice concerns. Social media campaigns, coordinated by Traoré's team, emphasized national sovereignty and responsible scientific practices. Meanwhile, Gates' advisors attempted direct negotiations with neighboring countries, hoping to bypass Burkina Faso's control. Traoré's intelligence network intercepted these maneuvers, and diplomatic pressure was applied immediately. He sent carefully worded communiques to foreign governments, emphasizing respect for Burkina Faso's sovereignty and legal jurisdiction. Tensions peaked when a leaked international report claimed that halting the GMO Mosquito project could cost thousands of lives. Traoré responded with a detailed scientific rebuttal, citing existing malaria prevention programs, vaccination statistics, and long-term ecological risks. His evidence-based approach silenced many critics and reinforced his image as a responsible, informed leader. Public demonstrations continued, now coordinated across major cities. Citizens held banners reading "Our Lives, Our Choice" and "Burkina Faso First." The movement transcended political affiliations. It became a national declaration of independence and moral authority in science governance. As night fell, Traoré reflected on the delicate balance he maintained. The international spotlight was intense, the pressure immense, but Burkina Faso remained resolute. He knew the world was watching, and that every decision he made could shape the future of the continent. Word of Burkina Faso's decisive stand spread rapidly across the African continent. Leaders in neighboring countries began seeking guidance from Captain Traoré, intrigued by his bold approach to protecting national sovereignty and public health. Traoré convened a Pan-African summit in Ouagadougou, inviting heads of state, health ministers, and leading scientists. The agenda was clear: establish a unified approach to foreign scientific projects, prioritize public safety, and create transparent oversight mechanisms. Our experience demonstrates that vigilance is not optional. Traoré told the assembly, "We must ensure that any scientific intervention on our soil serves our people responsibly, ethically, and safely." Representatives from over 20 countries listened attentively as Traoré outlined a continental framework for biosecurity, surveillance systems, emergency protocols, and collaborative scientific review boards were proposed. The goal was not to reject science, but to ensure that every experiment adhered to strict ethical and safety standards. Meanwhile, media coverage of the summit amplified Traoré's influence. Newspapers, television, and social media portrayed him as a visionary leader, capable of balancing scientific progress with moral responsibility. Public opinion across Africa shifted, with many citizens applauding Burkina Faso's proactive stance. Gates' team watched from afar, realizing that their initial strategy had underestimated the regional ripple effect. Attempts to negotiate quietly with individual countries were met with polite but firm refusals. Traoré's coalition had effectively set a new standard. African nations would collectively assert control over foreign scientific experiments. As the summit concluded, Traoré felt a sense of cautious optimism. Burkina Faso's example had sparked a continental movement, empowering nations to reclaim authority over their scientific futures. The battle was far from over, but Africa had found a new champion in Captain Traoré. As pressure from international actors mounted, Captain Traoré remained a beacon of unwavering resolve. Bill Gates' advisors brainstormed new strategies, including proposed joint research initiatives, promises of extensive oversight, and public relations campaigns designed to sway opinion in Africa. Traoré anticipated these maneuvers. He convened a meeting with his diplomatic team and communication strategists. "They will try to create doubt, division, and distraction," he said. "Our response must be unity, clarity, and transparency." Across Burkina Faso, educational campaigns intensified. Radio programs, village meetings, and social media updates kept citizens informed about the ongoing situation. Traoré personally addressed town halls and university gatherings, emphasizing that foreign experiments must be ethical, transparent, and safe. Simultaneously, he engaged directly with African leaders, ensuring coordinated stances across multiple countries. By forming a united front, Traoré effectively neutralized attempts to isolate Burkina Faso. His leadership transformed a national defense into a continental movement. Despite Gates' team proposing collaboration with other nations in Africa, Traoré maintained control over every decision. "Any cooperation must respect our sovereignty and our standards," he declared during a summit. His firm yet measured diplomacy frustrated the international team, but earned admiration from African counterparts. Meanwhile, local media amplified the narrative of responsible leadership. Citizens rallied behind Traoré, organizing campaigns and events, highlighting the importance of national autonomy in scientific affairs. The combination of public support, continental alliances, and transparent communication made it impossible for Gates' team to maneuver without scrutiny. By the end of the month, Burkina Faso's stance had evolved into a blueprint for ethical oversight of scientific projects. Traoré's strategic balance of diplomacy, public engagement, and security measures solidified his reputation as a decisive, visionary leader, one capable of steering his nation safely through the turbulent waters of international scientific politics. Captain Traoré knew that the battle was far from over. Even after destroying the GMO mosquito samples, the potential for clandestine operations remained. He ordered comprehensive inspections of all laboratories across Burkina Faso, ensuring compliance with strict biosecurity protocols. Specialized teams were deployed to monitor research facilities, and checkpoints were strengthened to prevent the smuggling of any biological materials. Traoré personally reviewed security plans, coordinating with military and scientific advisors to close every possible loophole. Meanwhile, Gates' team attempted to reintroduce the project in neighboring countries, hoping to bypass Burkina Faso's strict controls. Traoré acted swiftly, sending diplomatic communications and intelligence reports to alert regional governments of potential risks. His proactive measures prevented any unauthorized activity and reinforced Burkina Faso's authority. On the domestic front, Traoré engaged citizens in monitoring programs. Villages and communities participated in biosecurity awareness initiatives, learning to identify potential threats and report suspicious activities. This grassroots involvement strengthened national resilience and fostered a sense of collective responsibility. International media covered the unfolding story, highlighting Traoré's strategic acumen and leadership. Public opinion across Africa began to view Burkina Faso as a model for ethical scientific governance. Traoré's decisive actions, combined with transparency and citizen engagement, set a precedent that reverberated across the continent. By nightfall, Traoré reviewed reports from border security, laboratories, and communication channels. Every potential threat had been accounted for, every precaution taken. The message was clear: Burkina Faso, under Traoré's leadership, would not compromise on the safety and sovereignty of its people. Weeks turned into months, and the story of Burkina Faso's defiance against the GMO Mosquito project became a global talking point. Captain Traoré's name was mentioned in news outlets, academic journals, and international forums, praised for his unwavering commitment to public safety and national sovereignty. Gates' team continued to strategize, but each attempt to influence Burkina Faso was met with careful diplomacy and transparent communication. Traoré engaged international leaders through conferences, letters, and secure communications, emphasizing ethical standards and the principle of informed consent in scientific endeavors. Within Burkina Faso, public confidence soared. Citizens recognized that their leader had defended them against invisible threats and foreign pressures. Community programs flourished, focusing on public health, education, and civic engagement. Traoré visited towns and villages, speaking directly with people and listening to their concerns, reinforcing a strong bond between the government and the populace. The African continent took notice. Neighboring countries adopted similar biosecurity measures and consultation frameworks for foreign scientific projects. Traoré's leadership had created a ripple effect, inspiring a movement that extended far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. In international forums, Traoré's approach was hailed as a model of responsible governance. His ability to balance diplomacy, citizen engagement, and security protocols became a case study in ethical leadership. Even some of his critics acknowledged that he had set a new precedent for how nations could assert control over scientific projects, while maintaining global cooperation. By the end of the year, Burkina Faso had not only protected its citizens, but had also established itself as a beacon of scientific responsibility and sovereignty in Africa. Traoré's decisive actions and strategic foresight ensured that his nation's voice would be heard and respected in global discussions for years to come. As the international pressure intensified, Captain Traoré remained vigilant. Gates' team launched their final series of diplomatic overtures, attempting to persuade African leaders individually, offering incentives, research collaborations, and assurances of oversight. Traoré, however, anticipated these maneuvers. He convened his top advisors, emphasizing unity and transparency. Every action they take must be countered with clarity, facts, and solidarity, he instructed. Our people and our partners must see the truth of our intentions. Simultaneously, Traoré increased surveillance on regional borders and laboratories. Any unauthorized activity was met with immediate intervention. Local communities participated actively, reporting suspicious attempts and reinforcing the national security network. In a dramatic move, Traoré organized a continental press conference, inviting leaders from neighboring nations and international media. Standing before the cameras, he delivered a firm yet eloquent message. Burkina Faso and our African partners will not allow foreign projects to proceed without transparency, ethical standards, and the explicit consent of the people. Our sovereignty is non-negotiable, and our citizens' safety is paramount. The effect was immediate. International media praised the clarity and courage of Traoré's statement, while Gates' team faced global scrutiny. Attempts to isolate Burkina Faso or bypass its leadership were thwarted by a united front of African nations and widespread public support. Back in Ouagadougou, citizens gathered in the streets, celebrating the victory. Flags waved, songs echoed, and the sense of collective achievement resonated throughout the nation. Traoré's decisive action had not only protected Burkina Faso from potential biological risks, but had also established a precedent for responsible governance, ethical oversight, and national sovereignty. By nightfall, Traoré reflected on the journey. Every challenge, every diplomatic confrontation, and every strategic decision had led to this moment. Burkina Faso stood strong, respected, and secure, a testament to the vision, courage, and leadership of its captain. Months of strategic planning, diplomatic negotiations, and rigorous security measures had led to a defining moment. Captain Traoré had navigated Burkina Faso through unprecedented international pressure and potential biological threats with remarkable foresight and courage. Bill Gates' team, despite months of attempts, media campaigns, financial incentives, and diplomatic persuasion, found themselves outmaneuvered. Traoré's united front with African leaders, combined with the unwavering support of his citizens, had created an impenetrable wall of sovereignty and ethical governance. In a final diplomatic exchange, Gates' representatives acknowledged Burkina Faso's stance. The project would not proceed, and any further attempts to bypass the nation's security would be met with collective African resistance. Traoré had secured not just a national victory, but a continental precedent. Citizens of Ouagadougou flooded the streets in celebration. Flags waved, songs of triumph filled the air, and banners proclaimed messages of unity and resilience. Traoré walked among the crowds, greeting citizens, listening to their stories, and sharing in their joy. The international media hailed Traoré as a visionary leader. Headlines across the world read, "Burkina Faso stands firm. Sovereignty and safety prevail." Analysts praised his strategic acumen, ability to engage the public, and unwavering commitment to ethical governance. As night fell, Traoré returned to his office, overlooking a city that had weathered storms and emerged stronger. The laboratory vials were gone, the potential threat neutralized, and Burkina Faso's voice was louder than ever in the international arena. He reflected on the journey, the risks, the confrontations, and the calculated decisions that had brought the nation to safety. In that moment, Traoré knew that Burkina Faso had not only defended its people but had also set an example for Africa and the world. The country was safe, its sovereignty respected, and its citizens proud. Traoré's leadership had proven that courage, strategic thinking, and ethical determination could triumph over even the most powerful global pressures. The story of Burkina Faso's defiance would be remembered for generations. A testament to the power of principled leadership and the unyielding spirit of a nation.